He stood up from the table, his shoulders stiff, and the silence that followed felt, endless. "Emily," he started, his voice low, almost too quiet. "I'm tired." He looked at me with this, exhaustion in his eyes, deeper than anything I'd ever seen. "I'm tired of always being the one to compromise. Tired of being someone you don't even seem to appreciate. I don't know if there's anything left to fix." I just stood there. Like I literally couldn't move. Watching him pull further and further away emotionally, it was like watching something break right in front of me. And, for the first time, I felt this wave of actual fear. "Do you really want to end this?" I asked, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. "Are you seriously just gonna, walk away? From us? From our family? From everything we've built together?" Chris let out this heavy sigh, closing his eyes for a second before looking at me again. "Emily," he said, and his tone wasn't angry. It was, tired. So tired. "I don't want to leave. But I can't keep doing this. Do you even understand how much your words, the way you treat me, actually hurt?" I apologized. I snapped back, even though, like, deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Sure, I'd said the words, but I didn't mean them. Not really. Every sorry had been wrapped up in my pride, my unwillingness to admit I'd actually done something wrong. "You said the words, but you haven't changed anything," Chris replied, and his voice was, sharp. "You still see me as someone who's just here to make your life easier. You don't see me as a person. As your partner. I don't even know if you know how to anymore." That hit me. Hard. But instead of showing it, I just crossed my arms and gave him this, like, defiant look. "Well, if I'm so terrible, why are you even here?" I shot back, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Chris shook his head slowly, his jaw tightening. "I don't know," he said, and those 3 words, they were like a punch to the gut. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to argue. But the truth was, I didn't have anything to say. Not really. 'Cause he was right. The silence between us just, grew. Felt heavier with every passing second. And then Chris sighed again, running a hand through his hair. "I need space, Sam," he said, stepping away. "I need to think about what I want." I stared at him, my chest tight, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to, like, run after him, grab his arm, and beg him not to leave. But the other part? Part one hated? It was too proud, too stubborn to admit he might be right. So I just stood there, frozen, as Chris walked toward the door. And when he finally left, when I heard the door close behind him, the silence that followed felt, suffocating. The next morning, I woke up with this awful, pit in my stomach. You know that feeling where you realize you messed up, but you're still too stubborn to admit it? Yeah, that was me. Chris was gone, and the house felt, like, eerily quiet. Usually I'd hear him moving around, making coffee, or, just existing. But not today. Today it was just me and the sound of my own thoughts. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, scrolling through my phone, pretending like I wasn't, spiraling. Every notification that popped up, I hoped it was him. But nothing. By mid-morning, I started, pacing around the house. What if he really wasn't coming back? I mean, he's walked out before, but he's always come back eventually. This time, though, felt different. I texted him. "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, waiting for that little typing bubble to show up. It didn't. By noon, I was, half convinced I was overthinking everything. He just needs some space, right? He's probably at his brother's place or something, cooling off. But as the hours dragged on, that pit in my stomach just kept getting, bigger. When the kids got home from school, they, noticed it too. "Where's Dad?" my youngest, Mia, asked, her little voice full of curiosity. I froze for a second, then plastered on this fake smile. "Oh, he's just working late," I lied. But my oldest, Tyler, he's 10 and, like, way too sharp for his age. He gave me this look, like he knew I wasn't telling the truth. "Is Dad mad at you?" he asked, crossing his arms. My heart sank. What was I supposed to say? Mad at me? No, honey. He's just tired. We're fine. Tyler didn't look convinced, but thankfully, he didn't push it. That night, after the kids went to bed, the weight of everything finally hit me. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where Chris usually sat. The silence? It was deafening. I replayed everything in my head, every argument, every sarcastic comment, every time I made him feel small. At the time, I thought I was just venting, you know? Like I didn't mean to hurt him. But now, sitting in the empty living room, it all felt so obvious. I had been tearing him down for years. And for what? To prove I was right? To avoid looking at my own flaws? I picked up my phone again, my fingers hovering over his contact. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I typed it out. But I didn't hit send. I couldn't. Because what if he didn't respond? I sat there, staring at that unsent message until my eyes burned from the screen's glare. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about last night's fight. This was about years of me pushing him away, of me taking him for granted. And now? Now I might have finally pushed him too far. The next morning, I woke up to an even heavier silence. Kids were still asleep, and I could hear the faint hum of the fridge, the creak of the floor when I walked. But that was it. No Chris, no footsteps, no keys on the counter. Just nothing. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my cold cup of coffee. My phone sat next to me, silent and still. I'd been checking it every 5 minutes, hoping for a text, a call, anything. But, nothing. By mid-afternoon, I finally caved and called his brother, Mike. Hey, is Chris with you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, and then Mike said, yeah, he's here. The relief was like immediate, but it didn't last long because Mike followed up with, he's fine, but he said he needs space. He doesn't want to talk right now. I swallowed hard, trying to act casual. Yeah, no problem. Just let him know the kids are asking about him. Mike's voice softened. Mel, maybe you should let him cool off. Give him time. I wanted to scream, but instead I just said, yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike, and hung up. I stared at my phone for what felt like forever. Space? What does that even mean? How much space? How long was I supposed to wait before I could talk to him? Kids came home from school later that day, and it felt like they could sense something was off. Tyler, especially, he kept looking at me like he was waiting for me to crack. Did you talk to Dad? He finally asked, his voice careful, like he didn't want to upset me. I forced a smile. Yeah, buddy. He's just, staying with Uncle Mike for a little bit. He'll be back soon. Tyler frowned, but he didn't push it. Mia, bless her little heart, just nodded like she believed me. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat on the couch again, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family trips. Birthday parties. Chris smiling, holding the kids, looking at me like I was the center of his world. And now? Now I was sitting alone in the same house we built together, wondering if he was gone for good. The realization hit me like a brick. I had taken him for granted. All those little jokes, all those times I made him feel like he wasn't enough, it wasn't just one fight. It was years. And now I wasn't sure if I could fix it. I typed out another text. Chris, I'm sorry. Please just talk to me. I miss you. This time I hit send. And then I waited. Minutes turned into hours. Hours into days. And the reply never came. Days turned into a week, and still there was nothing. No text, no call, no Chris walking through the door with that tired but forgiving look he used to give me after an argument. The silence in the house started to feel, permanent. Kids asked about him less and less, and Tyler, well, he started to avoid talking about it altogether. By the second week, I was spiraling. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Call him again? Show up at Mike's place and demand we talk? But then, one night after I put the kids to bed, I walked into the kitchen and saw it, a letter sitting on the counter. My heart sank before I even picked it up. It wasn't just a note. It was, official. A petition for divorce. I stood there, staring at the envelope like it was a bad dream. Divorce? He actually went through with it? I opened it with shaky hands, flipping through the pages. Words like irreconcilable differences and custody agreement jumped out at me. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a threat. This wasn't him trying to scare me into apologizing. This was real. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter in front of me, and for the first time in years, I felt completely out of control. The house, the kids, the life we built, it was all slipping through my fingers. And you know what? I was still too proud to cry. Called Mike that night, my voice shaking. Mike, is this some kind of joke? Did Chris really file for divorce? Mike sighed. Yeah, Mel. He did. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this, but he's serious. He doesn't think there's anything left to fix. Nothing left to fix? How could he say that? After everything we'd been through? I hung up without saying much else, my mind racing. How had it gotten to this point? Was it really just that one fight? No. I knew the answer. It wasn't one fight. It was years of me tearing him down, of me putting myself first, of me expecting him to always forgive me no matter what. I tried to text him again. Chris, please. Can we talk? The message sat there, unread. Over the next few weeks, the reality of it all started to sink in. Chris wasn't coming back. He'd moved out for good, started separating our lives piece by piece. Kids saw him on weekends, and every time they came back, they talked about how happy he seemed, how nice his new place was. Killed me. Tyler finally asked me one night, Mom, why isn't Dad coming back? I didn't have an answer. How do you explain to your kids that you were the reason their dad walked away? I don't know, buddy, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We're just figuring things out. But we weren't. Chris had already figured it out. He was done. A few more weeks passed, and everything started to feel, surreal, like my life had split into before and after. Chris and I weren't just taking a break. He was moving on, and I was stuck in this weird limbo trying to piece together what went wrong. The house felt colder without him, and honestly, the silence was the worst part. Even the kids stopped asking about him after a while, like they'd already accepted that this was the new normal. One night, I found myself scrolling through old pictures on my phone. You know, the ones from when everything was good. There we were, smiling at the beach, celebrating the kids' birthdays, doing all those little family things I had, like, totally taken for granted. And as I looked through those pictures, I started to feel something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Guilt. It wasn't just that I'd hurt Chris with my words, it was everything I'd done, or, didn't do, over the years. All the times I ignored him when he tried to talk to me, all the little digs I thought were harmless jokes, all the ways I made him feel like he wasn't enough. But, admitting that felt like admitting defeat. Then came the custody meeting. Sitting across from him in that sterile office with lawyers on both sides, I felt, like a stranger to him. Chris didn't even look at me. He just sat there, calm and composed, like this was just another item on his to-do list. And honestly, that hurt more than if he'd yelled at me. Custody agreement was straightforward. He'd have the kids every other weekend and some holidays. No arguments, no drama, just business. When it was all said and done, Chris finally looked at me just for a second. His eyes weren't angry, but they weren't warm either. You know, Mel, he said quietly, I didn't want it to end like this. But I couldn't keep doing it anymore. I couldn't keep being the bad guy while you... He paused, shook his head, and didn't finish the sentence. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words just, wouldn't come. After the divorce was finalized, the reality hit hard. The house wasn't mine anymore. The car? Gone. Even the little things like the shared Netflix account reminded me of how much my life had changed. I moved into a small apartment with the kids, and let me tell you, it was a far cry from the life we'd had before. No marble countertops, no fancy backyard. Just a cramped space with peeling wallpaper and noisy neighbors. It was humbling, to say the least. But the worst part wasn't losing the stuff, it was losing Chris. One night after the kids were asleep, I sat on the couch in the dark, just thinking. I thought about all the things I'd said to him, all the ways I'd pushed him away, and how I'd convinced myself I was always right. And for the first time, I let myself cry. Not just a few tears, but like full-on sobbing. 'Cause I finally realized it wasn't just about the fight or the divorce or even the lifestyle I'd lost. It was about him. Chris had been the one constant in my life, the one person who always had my back, even when I didn't deserve it. And I'd thrown it all away because I was too selfish, too stubborn, too me.